Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. This is author R. Weir, Randy. Hope you're all having a great day. We haven't had a show for a few weeks, took a little break for the holiday, and we got 3 straight weeks of shows and then another break for the next holiday. But hopefully you'll be tuning in and been watching some of the shows. So I'm going to bring my author, and she is from my part of the world, at least where she lives these days. The cheesehead land of Wisconsin, being a Packer fan myself. I should have grabbed my cheesehead that I have out in my Packer loft or outside, but we have Kay Sparling on. Hi, how are you doing, Kay?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I know it was probably pretty cold there in Wisconsin, being December. What's it been like in your neck of the woods?
Well, it's very cold here right now, colder than usual because we have a polar vortex that's hitting us all this week, and it is awful. Like nights are like minus 20,
Oh,
not
really?
good. Oh, yeah, it's bad.
So are you up like north, like near the peninsula area there where it's
No, actually, I'm in southeast Wisconsin. I'm sort of in between Milwaukee and Madison.
wow, and
So
it's still that cold that
it's still that cold. Yeah,
far?
it's horrible where you're speaking about. Yeah, it's my
I'm sure.
nephew lives up there, and I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, kids couldn't go to school today, and they say it's going to lift in about, I think Friday's the last day, and then it's going to be out of here. But if this is any indication, and we've already had more snow than we've had in years in December, so I think this is going to be a bad winter.
Yeah, I think it's been a little milder than normal. At least I know when I'm watching the Packer games. I haven't seen many snow globe games.
Not yet, but they played a cold one yesterday. Was yeah,
Yes, it was chilly. It was like, I think 5 or 6 degrees. I think something
yep,
like during the
yep,
game.
and that was a high.
It was high. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell us a little about yourself. All the important stuff. Your background, and it's interesting on your website. The life you've led.
Yeah, very different than many authors that you would speak to. I come to this in the 11th hour, so to speak. And there's reasons for that because my story is a true story and it couldn't have been told for 25 years, from the time it happened. And so there's statutes of limitations and that kind of thing. So, in the meantime, since I was 7 years old, I have been a professional singer. I started out as a Broadway singer and switched over to opera in my late 20s and thus became an international opera singer, and did that for 3 decades. And then uh, ended up, probably the most famous thing I ever sang was I was chosen to do all the funeral masses, memorial services, etc., for the 9/11, the fallen 9/11 service people. I fit all the things that the government was looking for to do that. I had the clearance and I had the voice and I had the training. I had been a Catholic cantor. I've also cantored in synagogues and that kind of thing. So that was what I ended up doing. The last thing I ended up doing in my singing career was those. And then I decided I didn't want to live out of a suitcase anymore. Wanted to have a real life. And so I left New York, which was my home base, which I hardly ever was at, by the way. And then I moved back to the Midwest. And I ended up here in the upper Midwest. I didn't grow up here, but this is where I ended up. And I decided to start a school, a conservatory of music and theater and dance. And of course, I was the administrator, but also I was the head voice teacher. And that was in 2004. And I just recently retired from doing that and put out a slew of professional singers. I have put this place on the map, this area, and both in all genres of music. I mean, I have a lot of Broadway singers. I've got some opera singers, and then country singers and pop singers. And it's just been wonderful. I was really happy to be able to share all the rich, training I got all around the world, and bring it here where I knew there was a lot of talent, but there wasn't anything like what I wanted to do. My friends were saying, "Well, what are you going to do? Sing to the cows in the barn?" You know, New Yorkers, of course, right? And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Well, about this school, I guess you're just going to be like plowing the field because there's nothing like what you want to do there." And I'm like, "No, I won't be plowing the field. First, I got to take all the big rocks off the field. That's where we're starting. I mean, just grassroots up. And boy, did I build something. And I got great people to actually move out with me and to instruct with me. And we built a little empire of, you know, performing arts education at all levels, starting from about, 12 years old all the way to graduate students. So yeah, and I also taught at UW Madison. I did the Wisconsin Singers, if you know them from UW Mad, and just all kinds of stuff. So I've just retired from that, and you know, I started this book, but it was one of those things where I was just so busy all the time because at first I was singing and teaching, then I was teaching a whole lot. And so I would write a little, go to a class, get some ideas, and then have to put it on the shelf. And then the same thing kept happening. Finally, I found that I was going to take care of my mother, who was, she was diagnosed with Lewy body disease. And I decided I had not been around her a lot of her life. She was living with me at the time. I said, "You're going to stay here. I'm going to take care of you." So that's when I wrote this book, because it was my escape from doing that. She would, sleep a lot, and I would go downstairs to my office and I'd just start writing. And it was quite a journey, Randy, because I wasn't a writer. The only thing I'd ever written that got any kind of compliment was in undergrad. I took a children's literature course, and at the end, we had to write a story. And the person, actually, my professor said, "You've got some talent. If you ever get the time, I mean, I know you're in music and all this, but if you ever get the time, you should write children's stories." And I thought, wow, that'd be really cool to do in my retirement. Little did I know at that time everything that would happen to me in my life. And so, lo and behold, I'm an opera singer. I'm living abroad, and I get rather pulled into a political, a social nightmare in the late 80s during the Cold War. And I experienced a lot of things and I saw a lot of things. And I knew that story had to be told. And so, of course, like I say, there are statute of limitations on these kind of things. And so I said to myself, well, someday I'm going to write that story. Then I keep working and working and working. And by the time 9/11 comes, I have like PTSD upon PTSD upon PTSD, much like military people do. And so I finally say, I'm not sleeping, I got to do something. So I go down to the naval base in Illinois, in Waukegan, and they say, well, they've got some of the best PTSD research and counseling in the country. And I'm like, I'm all for it. Well, of course, I wasn't in the Navy. I wasn't in the military. So he made a deal with me. If I came down and did music therapy with his patients, the veterans, that he would give me this therapy on the side. And one of them was art therapy, music therapy, and writing in a journal. And he said, I want you to start writing stuff you experienced, pick one at a time and write them down. And then either myself or one of my interns will read it. Well, the very first time I handed something in, I saw him the next week, and he's like, "Oh my God, you've got to write a book." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what everybody keeps telling me, but I don't know how to write a book, I've never done anything like that. I've read all my life, but I mean, to write, I don't know how to do that." And that just kept getting encouraged. And so You're going to laugh, but I just wrote a book. I wrote a whole book, like over 100,000 pages. Okay. I mean, 100,000 words, excuse me. And so now I'm like, okay, I know all these famous writers. I know all these people from the life I've been living as an opera singer. I'm just going to try to find someone in the Madison area that might read this thing. I can pay them and just tell me if there's anything to it at all to work on. And so that's what I did. And she read it. She was just flabbergasted when I handed it to her. I had a hard copy, and she goes, "You wrote a whole book?" And I'm like, "Yeah, wasn't I supposed to?" And she was like, "I usually know." And I was like, "Okay, so I don't know anything, all right." And I'm like, "Well, if you can do it, that'd be great." And anyway, she reads the book, and she's like, "Wow, this is a story, but you don't know how to craft it." I'm like, "Yeah, no kidding." So she sent me to some places I could take classes, like these extension classes at UW, and Edgewood had one. And so I started doing that, and I kept getting encouraged. I mean, when my stuff would be read, the professors would go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and the other writers that were in the workshop would be going, "Wow, that's really something." And so one of them said, "Well, could I co-author with you?" And I thought about that, and I decided, nah, this is my story. I've got to learn how to write it myself. So I just kept trying, and I ended up taking the James Patterson master class. Someone got it for me for Christmas. And I had a TA, and he started loving the book. He's like, you've got to learn how to write, you're writing a thriller. You got to learn pacing, and he taught me about, uh, the dialogue tags and, these kind of things and all these things that's going to make it move and, what I needed to edit. And then he said, "I think you're holding back on me. You're not telling me everything that happened, because I told him it was a true story." And so I said, "Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't think people would want to know everything. And he's like, "Think James Patterson." And I'm like, point taken, because I know he takes his stuff out of FBI files and that kind of stuff. And he's written some pretty rough stuff, as we all know. And this is the same kind of stuff because we have refugees that are being tortured by the KGB and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay. So he was the one that told me, don't hold back, just write what happened. And that's when this book really started getting formed. When I learned how to write and edit down and then just put it in there and hope that people didn't just get grossed out. But it it does make you hate the antagonist a whole lot, if you know what I mean. And then you start rooting for the good spies. So that's really what it's all about, really. And so, um, you know, I became the accidental writer. And boy, has it been a journey. The whole thing about writing a book, finally getting it, and then trying to find an agent, and then trying to find a publisher. And I just it was so similar to when you get out of graduate school as an opera singer and you go to New York and you start every day you're auditioning, right, for agents, just every day. And every day you hear, "Well, yeah, you're really good, but you haven't sung anywhere professionally. How can I bank on you?" And so it's like that catch 22. Well, writers, as you know, are the same way. It's like, and what I kept running into is agents. Agents would be very interested when they read some and talk to me, but then they go to their agency and they'd say, "Opera singing spy, never. It's not gonna. It's unbelievable. It won't work." And I'm sitting here going, "Really? That's interesting." Mr. Publisher sitting up in your little office, you really know a lot about espionage, don't you? I mean, And so finally I got someone that said that, and I was doing one of those live, it was at a conference and you were doing the live pitch, right? And I'm like, okay, you need to look this up. Okay, here are the four categories that are mostly field agents in the CIA. And I said it's clergy, it's professors, it's international classical musicians, and so I just explained it to him. I said, and yeah, I guess it would work because see, you think it wouldn't work. That's why it works, you know?
Yeah.
And so anyway, by then I was pretty ticked off. I got a temper and I'm like, I don't have time to spend any more money and any more time doing all this pitching to these agents. I'm just going to find a different way. And so that's what I did. And I wished I had done it sooner, but I think I cut it pretty quick. I don't take a lot of BS and just swallow it for very long. I'm like, well, there's got to be a different way to do this, and so I'm going to look into that. So that's what I did, and so was it the right choice? Heck, I don't know, but it's a choice I'm going to live with for this book for right now. And so, I got to figure it out. But it made sense to me to get a book that was published and then try to if you're going to put money into something, well, let's put money into the PR part, and try to get someone that knows how to promote a book rather than just play this game for years and years. Because I go to these conferences and all these people, well, I mean, they've been going for years, and they're still not published. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense to me. But maybe they're going for a different reason than I was. I was trying to get my book published. I wasn't trying to, oh, Frank, good to see you again. It's not like it was a club, and I was like, okay, I don't get this, why do they keep going to these conferences if nothing's happening, So that's why I did kind of a hybrid publishing thing. And so, anyway, that's my story as far as how I became a writer and how I have a book in my hand. And and then what, I was scared because like, okay, so I think it's a good book, and of course my friends and my family think it's a good book, but then you have to start getting these editorial reviews and reader reviews and all that, and I've been really, really surprised. It's I've been very well received, and so I'm like, okay, um, I think maybe I am a writer now, which is still something funny for me to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Someone like you, I have no problem, but with me, it's like, oh yeah, I did write a book. That's right, and it's pretty darn good. So now I'm writing a second one because Caitlin Stewart was a spy for a while, so she's got more things to say. But this one's at the end of the Cold War. She goes over there to be an apprentice because all opera singers had to be an apprentice. She's in Vienna, Austria, and she's just going about her business, taking a few language classes before the season starts, and she starts seeing these weird things happen to her. Like young American college-age males are following her everywhere. And she's going, okay, what's up? And then she starts dating this guy that she meets supposedly in her language course. She doesn't know he's been planted there for her. And so she gets off early one day and says, I'm going to go over to where he says he's going to school, graduate school, and have lunch. And she goes there and nobody's heard of this guy. And she's like, but he said no, there is no person by that name here at the University of Vienna. And so she walks out, and all of a sudden he's there, and he pretty much drags her into this tinted, windowed Mercedes. And there's two guys up front, and they're all Americans, and they're like, we need to talk to you. And so that's when the CIA approaches her and says, we've been vetting you for 2 years in graduate school and during your competitions and all, and we have something we need for you to do for us. And she gets up. They take her to Sigmund Freud Park. They're sitting there feeding the peacocks while they tell her this, right? And she's like, damn, am I in a movie? I mean, I must be dreaming. So finally, it's just too crazy for her. She gets up and goes, I don't want anything to do with this. Starts to walk away. And then the chief, he says, well, what if you could help bring down the Berlin Wall? And that kind of stops her in her tracks. And she turns around and she's like, what am I going to do with I see it? Break the thing down? I'm an opera singer. I'm not a famous one or anything. And they're like, no. Well, if you just give us time to explain, there's a reason we need you. And so she listens and she ends up saying yes, which changes her whole life and all of her goals, you know, because now her career is going to be dictated by where she needs to be for the CIA rather than just being an opera singer and letting that course go. And the training is rigorous. And, she's the only woman in the entire theater of both. This mission's a combination of CIA and MI6, and she's the only woman in the field. This is 1987, the very end of the Cold War. So this book is the very moment she gets recruited until the very end of the mission and everything she goes through. And at first they think, oh, she's just going to we just need you, you're not going to be in any danger much. You just need to be a high profile, person who gathers information from us because you're the opera singer. You can go to the head of the state's opera ball. You can become friends with all these highfalutin people in the society, and you can, and filter anything you need to because you've got to, they are all opera freaks. And the main antagonist is a dirty businessman, Western businessman, that is trying to do business between the refugees that were let go by the USSR and that are just fleeing into the West, right? And have nothing. Okay. And the East Germans, the KGB's over in the East Germany, and the GDR wants to try to human traffic these because they're on their last legs too. So they're going to try to take advantage of all those refugees in the West. And this Herr Leitner guy, who is very, very powerful, and he is the one that is going to be the middleman to make this happen. Does that make sense? So he allows the KGB to come into these refugee camps and tell all these people these lies and then take them and do with them whatever they want to. How Caitlin can help is she's that opera singer, and Herr Leitner is an opera fanatic. And he is looking for a young, beautiful Mozart soprano that he can claim as Austria's next prima donna. And she fits all that mold. So she's going to just get, the red carpet laid down by him for her. And then she can get in and she can plant bugs or whatever, and find out what she needs to do. So that's what she starts as. But as the mission goes on, she ends up being a combat operative because she has to be. So she even makes the joke like when they're teaching her how to, deal with the semi-automatic rifle. She's like, oh, well, kids like, well, you'll be wearing the strap in case you have to run with da 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 da. And she's like, well, can I have a purple sparkly one? Because they're making fun of her purple sparkly shoes at one point that she wears to an opera ball. So she's a real wise guy. She tries to make them laugh when times are down. Her and this other character, is another CIA agent about her age. They're kind of always the ones that keep everything light in the worst of times. Tries to joke around and make people have fun and stuff. What I think what's really good about this story is that it's not like Mission Impossible. It's not like, well, Mission Impossible does show that there's camaraderie, but it's pretty on the scratch level. This book shows you the real relationships between spies in the field. And it's very real. I mean, nobody's going to strap themselves on a bomb and blow themselves out of a jet. That doesn't happen in my book, But there's definite danger, and you will feel it a lot. Um, and there's even a bit of romance in this because her trainer is Clive Matthews, who is the best spy in the Western world, and he's from MI6, and he's older than her, and he just does not believe women should be in the field. So he basically tells her to take her opera gowns and go by. I'm not training this. This is he doesn't think she can survive. But it just works out the way things turn. They have no choice but to use her. So he has no choice but to train her. And that's a good relationship there. These spies have a lot of it's like an onion. You just keep unpeeling them, and you find more and more as you get down to the core. About how they. I hope it shows how much they sacrifice and how they have to live. I hope it shows that.
So you said you're working on a second book in the series.
Yeah, the second book.
Oops.
And then because it's during the Bosnian War, and it's so her sidekick is actually a priest that she met in the first book that has went AWOL because he tried to tell the Catholics what was going on in Bosnia, all the massacres and all this that were going on, and nobody would listen to him. So he just went to the CIA and said, look, I've been over there, I've seen this, you've got to come and check this out. So they send Caitlin, but this time obviously there's no opera going on in a war zone in Bosnia. Okay, so she becomes a volunteer for the UN camps, Red Cross, or whatever they tell her. And so her and the priest are the two main characters, and they go and they try to get enough information to get ahead of this massacre, these massacres that just keep happening. And so that's what the second book's about, is they go in there and try to save a bunch of orphans.
So you have a opera singer and you have a spy. So
Mhm.
what traits those two professions cross over into each other? Are there anything that does that?
Well, first of all, language. I mean, because everything we sing, except for the very modern things, are going to be in a foreign language. And depending on what kind of voice you have, really kind of dictates which languages you'll be singing in. I am a Verdi soprano, so I'm mainly singing in Italian. I also can sing in German and Russian. Okay, Italian, German, Russian. You're seeing the trait here, okay?
Mhm.
That's why classical musicians, particularly singers, can be used as spies because we're so articulate and we're so fluent. We have good diction, and then we're so fluent in so many languages, and therefore we have a reason to be anywhere, and we probably know the language, and that is a must if you're a spy. And not only do you have to know the language, you have to know the different dialects. Germany has 5 different dialects. Austria has 2. You've got to be able, if you want to be undercover, and
Right.
you know, they need to know those dialects. Now, I was a little different because I was a high profile spy. So I'm an American opera singer over there singing. So I'm not really saying I'm undercover.
Right.
I'm being myself, but I'm still a spy. Does that make sense? So there's different kinds of things that different people do as a spy. Sometimes they're moles. That's when, you want to live in a neighborhood and you want everybody to think that you are Southern German, Bavarian. Okay. But a high profile style is on the whole other spectrum, which is what Caitlin Stewart is. She's just being herself and doing exactly what she'd be as an opera singer, but she's also got another agenda that no one sees, which is she's collecting information, and she's, back then, I mean, we still had to bug the hell out of things. So she was in his villa, she's gonna, she makes an excuse. Well, I've got to warm up. Well, yeah, use my office. Okay, sir, thank you. And then, she's putting 5 different bugs, around the place, So she can get in there when none of the other spies would have no reason in the world to be invited to his villa, you know? And so it's perfect. Yeah. And then, not for nothing, but I mean, she's got the clothes, right? I mean, she's got all these ball gowns to go to these opera balls. And she's got, most likely she's going to be asked to sing there and be the, at the head table always, because she's the entertainment. And then on top of it, the gowns and the jewels, and she knows what a shrimp fork is and a cream spoon and what they're used for. If there's 12 sets of, flatware in front of her, she's not going to go, oh, duh, what do I do with this one? Because she's been trained that already because of the society that she was going to have to be in. So it was perfect.
So, have you always been a big reader of books? I mean, obviously you did opera and stuff. Was there any authors that kind of inspired you to
I
want to
have
be a writer eventually as you fell into it?
I always loved books, and I have read and read and read and read and read all my life since probably about 12. And when I got in high school, I decided, wow, I really like that. Well, one of my favorites is Willa Cather. She really hit me at a young age. I love her. And I think it's the Pioneer Girl, and all those stories she made about that. She even did Song of the Lark, which is about a singer that goes to Chicago and New York. But anyway, I loved the way that reading, because I grew up in the country and I was out in the middle of nowhere, how I could just read a book and I could just go somewhere else and experience other things. And that just turned me on for the rest of my life. And so what I started doing by high school is like, okay, I liked Maya Antonia, so I'm just going to read everything she ever wrote. And then I'd go to my next one. I think it was John Steinbeck. And Grapes of Wrath we had to read that in high school, but then I read everything he wrote, and I just kept doing that. By the time I was in, college, I found Edith Wharton, and I mostly read American authors, but I also read quite a bit of the standard English lit too. And then, of course, I'm an actor as well as an opera singer. So I'm learning about Oscar Wilde. I'm learning about all these, Shaw and everybody. So that's a different kind of thing, reading a play, but yet it is, creative writing, playwriting is. Mm-hmm. And so, you'd be hard pressed to name an author I haven't tried at some point in my life, And so loved reading. Lived with a very prominent writer for 4.5 years in a relationship. I won't say who it is, but very, very prominent. So I learned a lot. That was a while back, and I know everything's changed in the writing world, but still, when I was in New York, I had lots of friends that were writers. Europe, same way, would know where to go to the cafes to hear the poems being read, the whole bit. Just absolutely love it. And so for me to finally write my own book, that's really special to me, because I mean, not that I could be anything near like all the people I mentioned, but at least, I got to try it, and I enjoyed it greatly. I like writing. I wish I had more time to do it, and I'm working on that. But I have a lot of things that do are important to me that I don't want to let go right now because I think that they do good, and so I'm always trying to weigh that, like, yes, I want to be involved in that movement, but I also want to stay home and write, my second book. So I'm trying to figure that out right now. And you could probably give me some pointers, like, do you just need to sit down and write every day, no matter what, or how do you do that?
For me, I'm a streak writer. So I'm not one of those diligent people that feels like you have to write every day. I have
Hmm.
things I have to do too. Um, but once I get into a flow, I try to sit down and just that inspiration's there. I'm going to get it written and get it out of me. And then sometimes it
Hmm.
may drain me, and then I stop again for a little while and and then
Okay.
pick it back up again, depending on it is. But I'm one of those too. When I see the end of the book, zap. It goes quick. The
Hmm.
first part's a little bit of a slog. You get to the middle, and it's like, okay, zoom, and then I can do 40,000 words like in nothing. So
Wow. But you have three whole series out too. How many books have you written altogether?
I have number 16 coming out here soon. I'm in the middle of the final edits for my editor and stuff right now, going through them and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been, and a lot of my books are 130, 140,000 words too. So they're
Oh, wow. Yeah.
mystery thriller type books are
Hmm.
can be
Hmm.
longer a lot of times. Very detailed plots and all that stuff.
Yeah. Mine's a little over 90,000, and but it started out like 120,
Yeah,
but they thought if I honed it down, and well, you got to remember my goal is Netflix series, and so they had you got to make a move, you got to make a move, and I'm able to do that now that I know I should because of my acting, you know. I've seen I've done screen work too, so I know what a screenwriter is going to want, you know, and so
yeah.
I'm trying to make it so it's, I heard that, and I don't know if this is even true, but you should watch the length of something that once you hand your book to a screenwriter because they might be overwhelmed and go, "Ooh, that's just too long," But
So tell us about your writing buddy,
oh, Paducah.
Paducah. Yes, which I had to
She,
look that name up, but I was like, well, what is that? And I found out it's Native American.
hmm because that's who found her on the side of a road, her and her siblings. Someone had just dumped them
Yeah.
terribly. And so this Native American family that I know picked them up and fostered them until they were weaned. And then they took them to the shelter. And they knew I was looking for a new cat. And so they let me know. And she's the one out of the five that I picked. And her name happens to be Paducah, which is an ancient native tribe that was in the area of the Paducah River in Paducah, Kentucky. Um, they have since, split up into more modern tribes, but it was a very, very, it was a very important tribe at that time, very, widespread, and it was a matriarch, which is cool. Yeah.
So how does she help you in your writing process? When I used to have a cat, it would either sit on my lap or it would lay across my keyboard, which made it really hard to write. So
Yes.
you run into those issues as well?
Not too much.
Yeah.
She, like I said, I've had many cats, and this is the smartest cat. I would say she's more like a dog in that I have trained her to know like 50 words and somewhere around there. And so what she does is when it's time for me to write, there's a big tall like bureau, antique bureau thing, and I put a pillow and a blanket up there. And then what she does is she does jump up where my mouse is. But then she jump, I tell her, okay, it's time, go up there. And she just goes up there and sleeps.
Mhm.
So she's here with me. But and she will not leave until I turn the computer off. I don't care how. And sometimes I'm like you. I go on a, I would go on a streak, and I'd write for 6 hours and into the night, but she'll just stay up there, But she's been with me for every draft I've written of this book, which was several.
Yeah. So you said you were an international opera singer, so I'm assuming that you've traveled all over the world. Is there somewhere in the world that was your favorite place to go, and maybe some place that I didn't really like going there? Any thoughts on that?
There were a lot of the latter. Well, let's see. I would have to say Italy, and I would say the northern part of Italy, like up above Rome, Tuscany on up, to like Lake Como. I just love it. I just love the nature there. I love the food, the people. That's probably my favorite place outside
You
of
can speak the language, so that worked for
yes.
you well there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I am a Verdi soprano, so there's that. And so and that would not mean anything to an American, but I was when my nephew was 25, he was living with me in New York, and I said, okay, I'm going to go to Tuscany for about 8 weeks. Would you like to go with me? And he had taken Italian in college recently, and so he said, sure. Well, and we went to the first gig, and then we went to we were going. I thought it'd be nice just to walk. It was an outdoor theater from where we were. This was in Tuscany, to our hotel. And when we got to the hotel, in the lobby, he saw what I was trying to tell him, that opera is different in Italy than it is in America. And if you sing Verdi, it's like there's God, and then there's Verdi, and then there's Verdi singers, And I mean, he'd have to pull people off of me, seriously, And people, little old ladies would try to get down and kiss my feet. I'm not making this up, okay? So the reverence for what I did, it was once I got used to it, I felt like I belonged. I mean, nobody in America cares if you're an opera singer. Nobody even knows what it is. They stopped a bunch of people right in front of Lincoln Center in New York City, where the Met, and at that time New York City Opera, and the orchestra and everywhere is. Okay, and they'd say, "Where's the Metropolitan Opera?" And people were like, "Oh." Only two people knew, and they were standing right in front of it. Okay, so that's what opera is in the United States per populace, right? But in Italy, it is not like that. So you kind of felt belonged. Now, do I want to live in Italy now? People are like, "Oh, you're going to retire in Italy?" I'm like, "Not right now. Not with the way the world is. I like my country. I'm going to stay right here." But that was my favorite. And then you have to remember, all the things I was running into in these different countries. I'd say my least favorite is Romania. I just won't go back there.
Yeah. Lots of problems there.
What was going on there at the time was the most hideous stuff I ever saw. And, it had to do with the orphanages and all, but no. I know that they've rebuilt, and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going back.
So we got about 15 minutes here, so we'll try to wrap up a little bit. But
okay.
I know you're working on your the second book. Is there anything you have in your mind that you'd like to write down the road beyond that series? Maybe something different, not maybe in that genre, something different?
Yeah. Well, so what I thought I might do is I have, after the Bosnia book, that's called Mission Impromptu, because she literally goes AWOL and to save these kids, and so she's in a whole bunch of trouble. And then the last Caitlin Stewart book that I think is worthy of writing, I would call it Mission Homeland, which is she's quit traveling. She's staying in New York. She's trying to start a conservatory with some other opera friends and saying, I'm done, with the whole international gig. And 9/11 happens. And immediately they come to her and ask her to sing all the funerals, memorials, services for the fallen service people because they need an opera singer. And well, she checks all the boxes they're looking for. So the president actually asked her to do this. And since everything got canceled, all the opera gigs and stuff in New York and Broadway, everything, she pretty much has to do it, and say yes. And so the third book in this series, it's a trilogy, would be about everything from the moment 9/11 happens. Caitlin's reinstated immediately. I mean, she's right there, right? And she's reinstated, and then everything that happens to her in the next, let's say 6 months. And she's going to talk about what it was like to be a spy then, but also what was it like, because we got blamed for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that was fun. But anyway, what it was like to be a spy then, but also she just happened to have her nephew living with her and her mother was visiting and they're on an island and they can't get off. So she's got her whole entire family there that's left with her. And so she's also going to teach people what it was like to be a New Yorker those first 2 months after the attack. Unless you were there, would have no idea, what those people went through. So it's going to be kind of a twofold thing about, the spy end of it, but also the civilian end of it as well. So that'll be it for them. And then this is what I'm thinking. So Caitlin gets tired of the whole biz, right? And leaves New York and goes back home to the Midwest. And she lives in the Upper West and she starts a conservatory of music. And she just, living the good life with her cat and, teaching young people and college people how to do this. And, every once in a while, something comes up. She lives in a little college town in the upper Midwest. And I could this would be total fiction, of course, but I could, make like a cozy mystery out of it, right? Yeah. Like, like the Quillerin books or something like, I was thinking one of the big things that is going on where I live up north in the reservations is these girls keep, getting kidnapped for human trafficking. They're taken over to the oil fields and stuff of South Dakota and such. Okay. And it's a terrible situation because the res police can't do much once they're out off the res, and the FBI, let's just say there's a big problem. And I knew a family that's happened to, and so I thought, well, maybe, I could bring awareness with that issue, and at the same time write a good yarn about it, where Caitlin has a student, because, Caitlin, I mean, I did teach some natives on scholarship. And so, one of these just goes missing. And, the family comes to her, hey, you were in the CIA. What can you do? And so she ends up calling her chief that was in Mission Thaw, and he's living in St. Louis. Like they just like out of their retirement, go find this girl, and then, find out everything that is happening in that trafficking situation. So it's sort of like, it's a cozy mystery book, but with some grit, because it'll be some social issue that is really happening that she'll again be, involved in. So that's what I'm thinking. And I also want to do some children's books.
That would be a lot different. Yes.
Yeah, I bet.
So I always ask everyone this question. The name of the show is Bringing Life to Characters. Yours is a little different because yours are kind of based on some factual events that have happened. But what do you do to get those characters to jump on the page? Do you fictionalize them in some ways? Do you add a little bit more flair to them? Obviously,
Oh yeah,
changing names and all that. But what do you do to get those characters to really jump off the page for readers?
Yeah, I like to like decide which every character that's involved, what are going to I just like to write quirky things about people. Like, I'll give you an example, like, and this didn't really happen, but I just thought it'd be funny, right? So Caitlin's at this really fancy place called Mozart Cafe, and the main antagonist walks in with some business people, and he sees her, and she's like, oh crap, and so she's on, right? Because he sits down and talks to her for a while, and he gives her such information. She needs to get out quick. All right. And she hasn't eaten her wonderful apfel streusel yet. Right. So she wants to get that. And so she looks around. And of course, it's a really fancy place, right? They have these great big, napkins with the M on the, embroidered on it. So she just throws it in there, wraps it in the napkin, and throws it in her, book bag, her music bag. But when no one's looking, well, she thinks she got away with this, but then when she's walking down the sidewalk, this MI6 guy comes up beside her and he goes, 15 minutes. My name's going to be Sam Elliott. Make sure that you answer the door. And then, he says, did you get that blah, blah, blah? And she goes, oh, yeah, it's right here in my bag. And then she pulls out this icky napkin with all this gooey apple streusel on it, and then she realizes it's gotten on the piece of paper he wanted, but she just hands it to him, and he's just like looking at it. He's like, did you steal that, dessert? And I'm like, no, I paid for it. But yeah, I stole the napkin, and he's like, okay, I mean, I just have people do stuff like that all the time that I think is funny. um
Give them quirky characteristics that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It makes them more human, and brings a little humor to it, and yeah. And it just goes to show that, I try to show with Caitlin, her farm roots come through sometimes. I don't care if she has a Dolce de Gama, gown on or not. You know what I mean? There's just things, and well, yeah, and she just knows a lot of information that the rest of those urbanites don't know because she's a country girl, So, yeah.
So you kind of went about it a different way than most people. What do you have any advice for aspiring authors? You kind of stuck with it, and you kind of mentioned that you took some classes and you studied and obviously got feedback. But anything else for anyone out there that you think that has
Yeah.
that bug?
I think what I always tell people, and it's the same thing I tell singers, like, you have to believe in your story. Don't quit believing in your story. Always believe in your story and just keep trying, because your story's good. You just got to learn how to craft it. And yeah, you're going to get shot down and you're going to think, oh God, what am I doing? But just keep doing it until you get it where it needs to be, and it will be. It will be. But you have to believe in your story. That's the thing. The rest will fall in place. You just got to do the work. And it's going to take time.
Yes,
You
it
know?
can. Unless you want to go the independent route. But yes, if you want to get an agent and all that, or
Mm-hmm.
publishing and stuff, it's there's a long process involved. And you talk
Yeah.
about movies or TV shows or long form shows or whatever. That's an even longer process. I mean, I've had
Oh,
many
yeah.
authors on here who talk about it, and it's like, this thing was optioned 20 years ago, and it's still sitting around. Sarah Perez was
Absolutely.
on, and I had her on, and she did the V.I. Wachowski, and she says Disney owns the rights, and I can't get it back from them because I'd like to. They don't do anything with it, but they own the rights, but they won't do anything with it, and she can't go beyond that point, and they won't give it back to her. So
Yeah, there's a lot of trip ups, in the film industry, in the production industry, and well, like, yeah, if you do the independent thing though, then yeah, I mean, you're sort of out there on your own, so I think everybody has to decide what's right for them and just do the best they can, you know.
So, do you have any events that you're going to be doing this next year to promote the book?
Well, I am trying to get to Thriller Fest, but I I don't know if that's going to happen yet, but it's
That's
looking.
usually in the summer months in New
It's in,
York.
yeah, it's in New York City, and it's in the middle, right in the middle of the summer. Exactly. I think it's for 5 days. So I am trying that, and I'm doing some more local things, but not a whole lot of events. No. So,
And then I know you had a special running for your new book, right? Your book,
yes,
Mission Thaw, right now. How
yes,
long
I
is that
do.
going to go on for?
That's going to go on till January 10th.
Oh,
So
okay.
all through the holidays, and we'll see. I mean, it's being, when I first got published, my publisher put, um, you know, we did a promo on Goodreads, and we said we'd give 100 ebooks out, and of course we did, and then but 2,900 people approximately signed up for that, and so I thought, well, heck, maybe if I bring the ebook down, because a lot of people buy those on Goodreads. Maybe if I do that, then they'll, because they have me in their cart, right? Because they had to do that in the first place to
Hmm.
be able to be win a copy. And so I thought I'd do this. Someone gave me one of my PR people gave me this idea, and it seems to be working. So yeah, heck, we might do it again after January 10th. So just getting
And
people to read it.
so the book's available on Amazon only, or is it on others? And paperback versions are available.
We are everywhere. So if you go to my website, kaysparlingbooks.com, it'll give all the places. But I mean, I'm even in Australia on Booktopia. I'm in Canada on Indigo. I'm on Barnes and Noble. I'm on Apple Books. Just about everything. That you can where you can buy books online. So it's not just Amazon. Um, my website there will give you all the different places you can, and it's hardcover, paperback, and ebook. I hope to be doing an audiobook soon, because I've gotten a lot of responses saying, this seems very theatrical, be a great ebook, audiobook. And so yeah, I guess I'll be doing that next. And that's a whole thing too, but at least I understand that, because that's equity actors and all that. And
Yes.
my publishers, I think that's going to be one of the easiest things for me to do, is the audiobook, because I'll listen to people and know exactly who I want for
Right.
Caitlin's voice. So yeah, that's coming up next, and should have been doing that a little sooner, but can only do so much at a time. The last 6 months I have probably been on I don't know how many podcasts, at least 3 or 4 a week, for 6 months. So it's been pretty grueling. Plus a lot of blogs and, all kinds of stuff, magazines. And so that kind of got in the way of my audiobook, but I still want to do it. Do you have any audiobooks?
Yeah, I have four, and I have two more that are being produced
Okay.
in my thriller series. The whole series will be on there, but it's a process, and it could and be expensive too. So depending on
Yeah,
your who you're going to get and finding the right voice, like you said, and
right.
it's
Right.
always a
So,
challenge. So,
mhm,
but that's good. Like you
absolutely.
said, in your case, you know what you're looking for because you've kind of been in that world. Me,
Yeah.
I had to. There was a lot of stops and starts for me. It took me a while to
Oh,
the
okay.
right person, and I even had a couple people who uh, wanted to do it and had to drop out in the middle for various reasons. This was kind of around
Oh,
COVID time, and various things, and that became
well,
such a challenge.
when I did my deal with the publisher, it was part of my contract. And so, as far as money, I'm getting a pretty good deal. I'm a
Oh,
good
that's
negotiator on
yeah,
things. And so, yeah. So, it's just a matter of, having the time to do it. And the young man's waiting for me to make that call. So I plan to do that at the very beginning of the year, and let him get started on that. So, yeah.
And you got your website, and then on your website you have links to other things. But I know you had a YouTube page as well that you have some stuff.
I have a theme song.
Yes, your theme
Yes,
song
there
for
is
your.
a theme song for Mission Thaw. It is original music. It's been professionally recorded. Great singer, one of my students, graduate students, sang it, and so that's on my YouTube, and we're on every social media. Again, kaysparlingbooks.com will give you all those, links to all the things we're doing. Yeah, so
Great. All right. Well, it's been an hour, so we'll wrap up here. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to cover or say or talk about.
no, just thank you for letting me come on and you
Well, I
know
appreciate you coming in from
getting to meet you and
from good old Wisconsin. We love our cheese curds. I don't know if
oh
you do,
yes,
but those
the
doggone.
cheese border.
Oh,
All my friends down in Chicago, every time they come up, they're like, "Oh, we just crossed the cheese line."
yeah.
It's
Well,
all-
we beat those Bears yesterday. We get to play them again in a couple of weeks, so we'll see
yes,
how
we
that goes
did.
in
Yes,
Chicago. So yeah. Okay.
yeah. All
All
right.
right.
Well, thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Kay. I appreciate you being on, and well, our paths may cross again down the road, maybe when your next book comes out.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching tonight. I've got my next show will be next Monday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. I'm going to have Zachary Hagan on. He's a fantasy author, and I'm looking forward to chatting with him about his books. And then I have DJ McCool and the week after that on Tuesday, and then we'll take a break for a while while we get through Christmas and New Year's and stuff. But appreciate everyone watching tonight. We will talk to you next week.